Welcome to Graci Asks Dumb Questions so you don't have to. And as the name would imply, I am in fact Graci, and today I'm prepared to ask dumb questions. But let's define dumb. What I mean is questions that you've been led to believe you should already know the answer to, even if you definitely don't, and that you're thereby embarrassed to ask. Specifically about artistry, recording, and the music business. We all know it. There can be a lot of gatekeeping in this industry, and it's frankly very yucky, like so gross and detestable and just like So the purpose of this series is to squash gatekeeping and ask questions that are neither dumb or embarrassing and learn together ways we can be better at what we love, music. So today's topic lives in the recorded music space. Now, whether or not you're someone who produces their own music or not, having a base level knowledge about recording can only benefit you. So today we're discussing DAWs and not the band. So what in the heck is a DAW anyway? DAW stands for Digital Audio Workstation. This is a software that you download onto your computer or sometimes an app on your phone that allows you to record audio into it or program synthesized instruments in it, and then edit or produce those audio files into a piece of music. The most commonly known DAWs would likely be GarageBand, Ableton, Logic, ProTools, FL Studios, etc. Most DAWs look like this when you open them up and start a blank project. And if you're producing an entire song in here, it will end up looking like this. Each one of these channels is a different piece of audio. One might be vocals, one might be guitar or drums, or maybe it's all beep beep boop boop computer symphony parts that you don't even need a real instrument to make. The point is, your digital audio workspace, or DAW, is the equivalent of the canvas and paints a painter would use to bring their vision to life. Except for us, it's music. So picture your DAW as a blank canvas waiting for you to create your very own masterpiece. For a long time, I just eked by on GarageBand. If you're not familiar with GarageBand, it comes standard on all Macs and is completely free to use. And it's been that way for a while. In fact, Apple premiered and launched GarageBand all the way back in 2004. And to my knowledge, with the help of a Google search rife with confirmational bias, Mac was the first and is still the only widely available computer that comes standard with a free and decently effective DAW. Having something so accessible is truly a game changer. I actually remember the first time I discovered GarageBand. I was probably 10 or 11 and my nanny, who had a new MacBook Pro, let me mess around with it. I had been writing music for a little while, but had honestly never even conceptualized recording it. I mean, I was barely in middle school, but I remember how excited I was. I didn't have anything other than my guitar, my voice, and GarageBand. So I recorded several tracks with the built-in computer mic, layered my vocals and guitar, and I was smitten. There's something very powerful about being able to actualize your art, even as a kid. So that was my first encounter with a DAW. And GarageBand served my limited recording needs just fine for years. Now I use an admittedly stolen version of Logic Pro. My old roommate helped me download it and install it on my MacBook, and I'll love him forever for that. Maybe someday I'll pay for the uncracked version. Maybe someday I won't. Let's be honest, even with the upgrade to my DAW, I have no idea why it's better or how to use it other than just getting my tracks up and hitting record. So, in this episode, my quest is, what the F is the difference in all these DAWs anyway? And does it matter? That was good. That pun, I didn't write that. That came to me in the moment. The first place to start any journey like this is to consult the all-seeing eye, Google. And if you do a cursory search on the Goog, you're going to find a poop ton of opinions. People who are diehards for one DAW or another, people who are absolute brand loyalists, and people who think they know everything, and that if you don't agree with them, that you're a big dumb idiot. So we're going to politely tell those people to heck off, and we're going to talk to some people who are not gatekeeping narcissists about DAWs so that we can determine the best option for ourselves individually. Because I will remind you, you are an individual and you're allowed to make different choices, especially when it comes to your art. So with that foundation being laid, we are ready to build a brick house of knowledge all about DAWs, dog. When I have a question that Google can't really answer for me, the first place I look to are my incredibly knowledgeable and talented friends who know more than I do about this stuff. So I've put in requests with a handful of these wonderful people to chat with them about DAWs. So first question, what should people consider when looking for a DAW that's right for them?
I'm Jack. I'm the agency lead here at Indepreneur, and I also have been an artist, a producer, and a songwriter for much longer than I've been a marketer. I also studied music production in college. I actually have a degree in audio engineering, which is interesting. First off, kind of solidifying yourself into knowing what it is that you're going to be recording or producing, what you're going to be working on. Are you going to be primarily live instrument focused and doing a lot of actual miking of instruments in a room? Or are you going to be doing more MIDI-based production heavy work? I think that's honestly the biggest consideration to make as far as like picking a DAW to use in 2022. Any DAW that we mentioned so far will do those things, just some of them do them differently or maybe more efficiently or feel more intuitive to you as a person.
I'm Michael. I do a music project called Kai Tune. I started producing when I was in middle school, so that's what I've been doing the longest. I chose FL Studio when I was 12 years old because everyone who made the type of music I wanted to make, which was techno trance stuff in the year 2007, 2008. Everyone was using FL Studio. And I mean everyone on the internet, not my friends. I wasn't in a coalition of 12-year-old music producers. But especially at that time, FL Studio was the preeminent DAW that everybody used. So I didn't consider using anything else. I just downloaded the demo of that and then never stopped using it. I like it a lot. I feel very strongly about the fact that the right DAW for anyone is just the one that they enjoy working in the most, because you can achieve the same results in all of them. They'll do the same thing.
I'm Jonah. I have a heavy background in audio engineering. I went to school at a great music school in Los Angeles, learned how to record there in a professional studio on a large format console. And then from there, I went to work at studios in LA, and I bounced around a few different studios for a number of years. One, I would say right off the bat is, are you on a Mac? Because if you're not, then you're not going to get Logic, because it's Mac only. The two biggest things, and again, I mean, I honestly used to tell people this too when I was teaching, two things. One, do you know someone or have experience with someone that has one already? Like, in other words, like when I started in Logic, I was brand new to recording on a computer at all. I was just like a hip hop head, and I liked making beats, and I was like, I want to get into making beats. And a guy that I met at a job at Guitar Center, and we ended up living together, he was like super into Logic. And so I kind of started to learn from him, and it was like, all right, well, naturally, this is what I'm going to buy, because I have this great resource here that I can, hey, how do I do this? Hey, how do I do that? But then like secondary to that is also, what are you prepared to find online as well? Because there's tons and tons and tons of tutorials and free basic stuff on YouTube for pretty much any DAW that you could get into. So it might make sense before you pick a DAW to look around. Right off the bat, you see Ableton and you're like, oh, that looks really confusing. I don't like that. But then you see a video on Logic and you're like, oh, that looks pretty user-friendly, or ProTools or whatever,
Well, I am Jesse Walters of Indepreneur / Basic Printer is my music project. The DAW that you pick, my prerequisites for it would be, once you've learned it, does it not get in your way? Does it not fight with what you want to do? Does it make sense? Like, if I turn this knob, this happens. And, is it an intuitive interface for you? And then the only other thing I would say is, does it run solid? With the music you're trying to do, does it handle your music fine? Do you have 20 simultaneous software instruments and need it to do a lot of computing? Does it not crash?
So we know now that there are a couple good places to start when considering what DAW is right for us. For starters, what are you going to be recording? Vocals, live instruments, software instruments, synthesizers? While all DAWs have virtually the same functionality, some DAWs handle different aspects of these better than others. So it's worth thinking about that as you choose. Second, do you have a place that makes the most sense to start? Do you have a buddy that's already working in a particular DAW? Do you already have access to a particular one? These can also be considerations. But what are some other big pros and cons that might impact our decision?
I guess A potential con of Ableton is that it is a little bit quirkier, I guess, because of its more modular and like dynamic interface. There might be a learning curve to it.
I have found Pro Tools audio editing to be really strong. Editing drum tracks, for example. I love editing drums in Pro Tools. It's very easy. Pro Tools has a feature called Beat Detective, which allows you to basically put markers on the transients of that whole performance. So you can chop up the drums at, like, say, the kick and snare points, and you can make really smooth, kind of cohesive drum performances that, you know, are right on the grid. As far as weaknesses, in my opinion, as I've gotten into doing more work with MIDI and with virtual instruments, for one, Pro Tools, like, out of the box doesn't come with, like, in my opinion, super great virtual instruments compared to Logic, for example. I actually really like Logic's kind of stock starting points for sounds.
Programming MIDI in FL Studio is like the FL Studio has a piano roll, which is like a timeline. On the x-axis, you have like a key bed, you know, with all your notes, and on the y-axis, that's your timeline. And like Ableton has a piano roll, Pro Tools, every DAW has a piano roll, but FL Studio is the best piano roll. It's more intuitive than any other piano roll I've ever used. Programming melodies by hand and beats and anything MIDI, like doing that stuff by hand, I feel like FL Studio is the most hospitable for that kind of production. The interface in FL Studio is a lot better for my creative workflow. It lets you be messy. It sounds like a caveat, but it's a pro for me because I like to get my creative ideas out as quickly as possible. You can throw stuff down kind of haphazardly, and the software doesn't force you to, like, especially Pro Tools. Pro Tools is the worst about this. You have to do everything this particular way. In exchange for that, you get stability within the program and everything stays organized. But FL Studio lets you you make it like however you want. It's entirely customizable.
Yeah, so pros in Logic, for me, there's so much built-in content that you get. So pretty much right out of the box, you have really good plugins, which for those that don't know, plugins are they're like programs that exist within a DAW. So they're generally third-party, but often native, meaning they're part of that software already that you can open and use for different things, program within a program. Sometimes they're instruments. So if you want to have like a certain keyboard sound or a certain synth sound, those would be virtual instruments. And then there's processing plugins, which are more for like mixing. So compressors, EQs, reverb, delay. So all these things, Logic really comes with a lot of that stuff right out of the box that's really good and really easy to use. Yeah, just easy to use. You know, I think for people that, you know, like I said, if you started on GarageBand or something like that, which is a very user-friendly basic DAW, you know, Logic is just like a step up from that with more features.
So there's pros and cons to every DAW. There's also tips and tricks in each that can dramatically improve your workflow. When I made the switch from GarageBand to a stolen version of Logic, I decided to take some lessons from a knowledgeable producer in Logic specifically. I did this so I could start getting a basic understanding of the tools I had available to me, how to use them, and ways to accomplish what I was already doing in Logic with more efficiency. There were so many things like volume automation and EQ that I was doing in such a roundabout way. Now, was it accomplishing what I needed it to? Technically, yes. But learning smarter ways to work has given me more flexibility, and it helps me get my work done way more efficiently. So what do our friend Spurts have to say about their favorite tips and tricks? And then this is like where you'll play the clips of everybody talking about their favorite tips and tricks in the DAWs that they use. And that's what you'll do right here. So like cut out all this part of me talking and just put that in right here.
I would familiarize yourself with the toolkit that you have. So looking at the virtual instruments and the synths that you have, kind of starting to audition them and seeing what they sound like, starting to work with the samples that might be included if there's a sampler or sample packs, and starting to think about what kind of palette fits you as an artist.
Starting to learn like key commands and stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, this simplifies.
Yeah, key commands. I think that's a great point. Like that's one of the biggest things that, like, when I was really learning how to produce music and be an engineer, one of the biggest things was trying to get fast. And key commands are the thing that really unlocked that for me. And that's half the reason that I've stayed in Pro Tools. Like I've honestly considered multiple times throughout the past few years trying my hand at Ableton because I've toyed with it, but I've never really used it. But then I think about how quick I am with Pro Tools, and it's like, man, I would be like an idiot in this new software, and I don't have the time to learn to get fast now.
Right.
So yeah, that's definitely a great point.
You can create presets of everything in FL Studio. You can create a preset for a mixer track channel. So if you always mix your vocals in a certain way, you can create a preset of that effect chain and then load it into a mixer track channel. And I'm tempted to describe how to do that right now, but that's not really the point of this conversation. It's super simple though. It's really easy.
Pretty much anything in Ableton that you're looking at, you can click this button. When you click it, it will just show all of those parameters that can be changed. And then all you have to do is take your MIDI controller. You can just click like the knob you want to turn and then turn the knob on your controller, and then it's just synced up. And anytime you turn that knob, it will turn the knob in Ableton.
Now, one more really important thing we haven't covered yet is pricing. For most independent artists, myself included, this is a real factor that we have to consider when choosing our tools. Budgeting is a real consideration, which means we need to know how much our DAW is going to cost, plus we need to know if it comes with everything we need or if we'll need to invest in other tools in addition to our DAW to bring our visions to life. And this is where you play the clips about pricing.
Pro Tools a few years ago started with a subscription model where you can buy a Pro Tools subscription from Avid and pay monthly or annually. And for Pro Tools Studio, which has a good chunk of the features that you would need, you can pay $39 a month monthly, or you can get a discount if you commit to like a year and you can still pay it monthly. And that's around, I think that's like $32 a month. Or you can pay an annual price of $299.
FL Studio, I think, is one of the most fairly priced DAWs. You can get the DAW, like the full DAW and 13 native plugins, and they're great plugins in my opinion too, for $300, and that includes lifetime updates. If you bought FL Studio 12 years ago, you haven't had to pay for an update since. Like, you're still getting updates. Their prices haven't changed either. I don't know how this company is still afloat.
Logic has pretty transparent pricing, and this is something that I think Pro Tools has never done a good job of. So Logic is Logic. You buy it, and like literally, in my opinion, you have everything you need. I think it's $200 on the App Store, maybe $250. Like I said, it comes with literally everything. Like, I mean, if you had the knowledge and the skills to go from point A to point B, like meaning you know how to use the software, Logic pretty much has everything you need right there for that $200.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the pricing right now. You can buy it outright, but they actually offer financing, which I love, and they weren't at the time. You can do intro for $100 or standard for $450, which I have, and then suite for $750. Intro is very parsed down, but actually for many people, it might be something they wouldn't outgrow, very quickly. It's 16 audio and MIDI tracks, which is not very many, but like if you were looking to use Ableton to just get started and do some demos, or if you were telling me you were like a folk artist, recommending Ableton to you would be really weird. But it's like so fun to use it in my mind. Like, I've made acoustic stuff on it. Intro might cover that need.
Okay, a lot to think about here. While these DAWs can all accomplish the same thing, they can record live music, or you can program software instruments or synths in them, they do have their nuances. Things that they specialize in, genres that they lend themselves to, varying levels of accessibility for beginners, varying prices for different budgets. It might still feel a little overwhelming. Like, we've just learned a lot about 4 of the most popular DAWs, but maybe you're still unsure what the right move for you is. So let's recenter a little bit. Not to oversimplify things, but heck, let's not overthink it. If you want to make music, just pick a DAW and get started. I cannot tell you how often I get stopped in my tracks by analysis paralysis. Simple decisions become drawn out, anxiety-ridden, painstaking hills that I metaphorically die on. And who am I battling? Just my own heckin' brain. I love the notion of getting started where it makes the most sense to start. Like with a DAW you already have access to, or the one that's the best budget option for you. Learning the heck out of it, stretching it to its limits, and pivoting once you need to. That's something I remind myself a lot these days. Get started, go as far as you can, and pivot when you need to. It can literally be that simple.
I mean, look, we all started knowing nothing about this, right? You don't come out of the womb and know how to use a DAW. So just like take your time, and like when I first started, I used Fruity Loops very briefly. I had like a free version of Cubase. I had a free version of Sonar. These are like other DAWs a lot of PC users use. And, I kind of fumbled around in those for a long time, or, a year or so, and like didn't really know what I was doing. It just takes time. This software can feel very complex. And even though it's, at the end of the day, it's not super difficult to learn, it can feel that way. So yeah, just advice would be like, take your time. Don't be afraid to try different programs. You're not going to break anything. That's a really nice thing about software is like, if I have a synthesizer or a guitar and I do something terribly wrong with it, it could get damaged or broken. And this is a computer program and nothing bad's going to happen. Worst case, it crashes. I don't know. Just have fun with it, try to enjoy it. And, it's like a vessel to make art. And that's pretty cool, I think. So
my last piece of advice, honestly, is get free trials, try them out, see what feels good to you. Don't be afraid to pivot early on if you find something that you like more than what you're working in. Find something that you like, start working in it, create in it, get your hands dirty, have fun. And then if it stops serving what you need and it doesn't fit your needs anymore, then you can make pivots and you can make changes. But I think the thing to keep in mind is like, don't let choosing stop you from doing. Just get into it and start making music.
While we may not have solved all the mysteries of the universe in this episode, I do hope that we did take some of the mystery out of DAWs. Remember, it's about you making your art. So crack open that canvas, aka your DAW, and go create. And one more reminder. There is no such thing as dumb questions. Let's keep dismissing the nonsense of gatekeeping, keep learning ways to improve our craft, and keep rising together. So, what should I ask next? Leave a comment or fill out the form in the description to let me know. I've been Gracie Phillips for Full Stack Creative. Don't forget to like and subscribe, ding that bell for more videos about music marketing, artistry, gear, and more. And I'll see you next time, you sexy beast.